I'll take the second question first, and the bottom line is we have a finely synchronized plan that brings troops in and moves them out. When it comes to redeploying equipment, whether it goes out through the north or the west or the south, all of that is coordinated and synchronized, and we time it, of course, so that we can maintain accountability of equipment, and we move the personnel, medical evacuation capability, and all of that it's really synchronized. So it has not been a challenge, and it will not be a challenge for any of our efforts from this point forward. We do anticipate bumps along the road, if you will. For this reason, we approach every one of these operations as, in fact, an operation. It's not administrative moves, so every one of these is, we start with looking very closely at the potential threats, and then we develop a plan to understand what's going on in the area and mitigate all of those threats. And like I said, all of this is coordinated with the Iraqi security forces so that we can ensure that our troops are protected every step of the way. The first part of your question actually dealt with flexibility. For stability operations, let me just back up and talk very briefly about OND, or Operation New Dawn, and how we shifted. When we shifted to stability operations, our focus changed. Our focus went from leading combat operations or leading security operations to three major tasks for the military troops. The first was to advise, train, assist, and equip the Iraqi security forces. So it was really about us helping them as they conduct operations. And the second task was to conduct partnered counterterrorism operations. Those are ongoing. We're in operations nearly every day in a combined fashion with the Iraqi Special Operations Forces. And then the third task was to support and protect the members from the civilian members of the U.S. mission in Iraq as they work to build civil capacity throughout the country. As the PRTs have closed over the period of this summer, we have less and less of that third task in action. We do still provide some military movement support to members of the embassy, but it's not nearly in the same scope that we had when we had a number of PRTs throughout the provinces. But as far as our advise, train, assist, and equip mission went, if we had started cutting our troop numbers early on, that would have significantly limited what we could get done with the Iraqi security forces. We have achieved a lot over this last year, and honestly, and we can go into this in more depth if you'd like, I think they do still have a ways to go, but we've accomplished quite a bit. The last part of flexibility has to do with dealing with the unknown. The CG wants to be able to, and all of his commanders want to be able to deal with the unknown. And obviously, had there been a threat that we had not anticipated, or any one of a host of different possibilities, if you have trained personnel and that are equipped properly to deal with it, they can better deal with the unknown. And so that's why we wanted to preserve as much flexibility as possible.
General, hi, David Cloud with the LA Times. What does the slope of the line look like on the reductions from here till the end of the year? I mean, is it a sort of constant reduction? Is it a kind of plateau and going off a cliff? I mean, I don't want, just give me a sense of what the plan is for bringing the last man out here.
Well, obviously it's going to be done in a coherent fashion, and we conduct these movements by units. So we don't send individuals out other than when we redeploy individual augmentees by air. But if you're thinking of the ground move, we do all of that in a coherent fashion. And so sometimes you get it's probably best described with the way you frame the question. It's best described as a series of stair steps. We had two different brigade advise and assist brigades. One was actually an advise and assist task force leave from USD North since the early part of September. One was based out of Mosul and was responsible for Nineveh province, and then another one based out of Kirkuk. They were replaced by one. So as units move out and are replaced by fewer and fewer forces, you do have a series of stair steps. As you know, we did, for the bulk of this last year, we had 3 divisional headquarters in Iraq, one in the north, one in the center, and one in the south. And in the early part of September, we went to 2, one in the north and one that took responsibility for 2/3 of the country, USD Center, 25th Infantry Division headquarters, which is responsible for Baghdad, Anbar, and all 9 southern provinces. Before the end of this month is up, USD North, the great 4th Infantry Division, I know Dave Perkins was on a couple of weeks ago with you, they will redeploy. And so then we'll be down to 1 division level headquarters. So it's really a series of stair steps, but the way we maintain security throughout is actually by conducting unit moves.
General Craig Whitlock with the Washington Post. I was wondering if I could follow up on some of your comments about General Austin wanting to maintain 40,000 plus troops as long as he can to provide himself with more flexibility. To what degree has he wanted to keep that many troops there to factor in these negotiations about possibly keeping thousands of U.S. troops there after January 1st? Because otherwise it appears that it's going to be a very rapid withdrawal that could possibly lead to some sort of a vacuum.
Well, I think the first thing I can answer is that we have no plan to leave thousands of troops here beyond January 1st. And like I said up front, we're 100% on track to honor all of our commitments to both Iraq and the United States under the security agreement. And one of those obligations under the security agreement is complete withdrawal of U.S. forces. Speculation about what may last beyond the beginning of 2012 is not part of this equation. Now, having said that, when we started planning and coordinating and synchronizing all of this redeployment last year, and we've been at this a while, one of the things that we wanted to do is preserve as many options for the commanders as we could, because we didn't know what was going to happen in discussions and whether or not the Iraqis were going to request some military assistance, or if they did, what roles and missions they might be requesting the U.S. forces to perform. And so based on that, we kept our troop numbers high, or steady at least, through the bulk of this year. And that was one of those things that, again, part of our job in the military is to provide options and to provide courses of action to our decision makers in Washington, D.C. If we had limited our troops early on, there are less options and less courses of action available to the decision makers about how to meet any requests that could come. But that was part of the plan all along. We haven't had to change that plan, and it hasn't affected our calculus.
Journalist Mike Evans from the London Times. Are you still confident that the Iraqis, once you do move out completely by the end of the year, will be able to cope on their own in places like Anbar province, for example? And also, just out of curiosity, are there any other nations currently working with the American force in Iraq, or have they all gone by now?
Again, I'll take the second part of your question first, and there is a NATO training mission in Iraq. It's commanded by Lieutenant General Bob Caslin, who took command of that on that mission on the 1st of October. So there are a number of nations involved with helping to professionalize the Iraqi military forces as well as the federal police under a NATO umbrella, but it is a relatively small mission. Less than 150 professionals from a number of different NATO countries. Again, their focus has been dominantly on helping with professional military education and working at the strategic level, along with a heavy professionalization effort by, in particular, the Italian Carabinieri with the Iraq's federal police, and they've had quite a positive impact over the last several years. The contributions of other nations is small in number compared to the U.S. forces, but obviously very